I'll never forget the day I met Jake at the Granite Edge climbing gym. The chalk dust hung in the air, catching the afternoon sunlight that streamed through the high windows. I was taking a break, sipping water, and nursing my aching forearms after an hour on the bouldering wall. That's when I noticed him, tall, with shoulders that spoke of countless pull-ups, and a focused expression as he studied the advanced route on the far wall. As a gay man who'd been climbing for 3 years, I'd learned to keep my personal and climbing lives separate. Previous experiences had taught me that not everyone in the climbing community was as accepting as I'd hoped. But something about Jake made my heart rate spike in a way that had nothing to do with physical exertion. My name is Alex, and rock climbing had become my sanctuary after college. There's something incredibly pure about the sport. It's just you, the wall, and gravity. No judgment, no expectations beyond what you place on yourself. I'd found peace in the methodical problem-solving of each route, the meditative focus required to progress upward one hold at a time. The gym had become my second home, a place where I could challenge myself and find community, even if parts of my identity remained carefully guarded. Jake was clearly a regular, exchanging familiar nods with the staff and other climbers. I tried not to stare as he chalked his hands with deliberate movements, his forearms rippling with defined muscle. He wore a faded competition t-shirt from a national event I'd only dreamed of qualifying for. I recognized immediately that he climbed at a level well beyond mine, the kind of climber I aspired to be. What I didn't expect was for him to walk directly toward me after scanning the gym. "Hey," he said with an easy smile that created a small dimple in his left cheek. "I'm about to tackle that 5.11D and could use a spotter. My usual climbing partner bailed. You up for it?" His voice was warm and confident, with no hint of the hesitation people sometimes had when approaching strangers. I nearly choked on my water. Sure," I managed, trying to sound casual while my brain frantically assessed whether my skills were up to the task of spotting someone on such a difficult route. "I'm Alex, by the way." "Jake," he replied, extending a chalk-dusted hand. His grip was firm, calloused from years on the wall. "I've seen you around. You've got good technique on the overhangs." The compliment sent an unexpected wave of pride through me. He'd noticed my climbing? How long had he been watching? As we walked toward the wall, I felt simultaneously flattered and nervous. Spotting is an intimate thing in climbing. You're literally responsible for someone's safety, positioned to break their fall, your attention completely focused on their body and movements. With Jake, this suddenly felt loaded with additional meaning I wasn't prepared for. The route he'd chosen was intimidating, a near-vertical face with tiny crimps and precarious footholds that required precision and power in equal measure. Jake explained his planned sequence, pointing out the crux moves where he might need extra attention from me. I nodded, trying to focus on the technical aspects rather than the way his eyes crinkled slightly at the corners when he concentrated. "I tend to barn door a bit on this section," he explained, pointing to a particularly challenging sequence about 3/4 up the wall. "If I slip, I'll probably swing out to the right, so be ready." He said it so matter-of-factly, as if discussing the weather rather than a potential fall from 20 feet up. As Jake began his climb, I was struck by the fluid economy of his movements. Where I often muscled through problems, he seemed to dance up the wall, finding perfect balance points and using momentum to conserve energy. His breathing was controlled, his focus absolute. I found myself holding my breath during particularly difficult sequences, my hands instinctively positioned to catch him if needed. The gym around us faded into background noise as I tracked his ascent. He moved through the first half of the route with apparent ease, pausing occasionally to shake out his arms and reassess. Then came the crux section he'd warned about, a sequence of small holds with limited foot options that required core tension and finger strength I could only dream of. Jake hesitated for just a moment, chalking one hand while holding on with the other. I could see the calculation in his eyes as he mapped out the sequence. Then he committed, reaching for a tiny crimp hold that looked barely large enough to support a fingertip. His body tensed, muscles engaging to maintain position as he shifted his weight. That's when it happened. His right hand slipped off the hold, the chalk cloud puffing into the air like a small explosion. His body swung violently to the right, just as he'd predicted. I reacted instinctively, moving into position beneath him, arms raised and ready. For one heart-stopping moment, I thought he might fall completely, But Jake somehow managed to maintain his grip with his left hand, his feet scrambling to find purchase on the wall. "Got you," I called up, my voice steadier than I felt. Our eyes met briefly, his wide with adrenaline, mine probably reflecting the same. There was something electric in that moment of shared vulnerability and trust. Jake recovered with impressive composure, finding a stable position and shaking out his arms. "Thanks, man," he called down. "Good spotting." Then, to my amazement, he regrouped and attacked the crux again, this time successfully navigating the difficult sequence. When he reached the top, he let out a whoop of triumph that echoed through the gym, drawing a few appreciative nods from other climbers. As he rappelled down, I found myself strangely nervous again, as if our brief connection during the moment of crisis might evaporate once his feet touched the ground. But Jake was beaming when he landed, immediately turning to me with an outstretched hand for a high five. "That was clutch spotting, Alex," he said, his voice warm with genuine appreciation. "That's exactly why I don't like soloing the hard routes. That slip could have been nasty." I tried to downplay it. "Just doing what any spotter would do. Besides, you recovered like a pro. I've never seen anyone save a barn door like that." We moved to the seating area, both of us reaching for water bottles. A comfortable silence settled between us as Jake unwrapped his tape and flexed his fingers. I couldn't help noticing a small rainbow pin attached to his chalk bag, something I hadn't seen from my earlier vantage point. My heart skipped a beat, but I tried not to read too much into it. Plenty of allies wore rainbow symbols. "So how long have you been climbing?" Jake asked, breaking the silence. "About 3 years seriously," I replied. "Started in college as a way to avoid the freshman 15, ended up addicted to it." "You?" "Going on 8 years now," he said. "Started on real rock with my uncle in Colorado, then got into gym climbing for training. Now I do both, but there's nothing like being out on actual stone." His eyes lit up when he talked about outdoor climbing, and I found myself drawn to his enthusiasm. "I've only been outdoor climbing a few times," I admitted. "It's intimidating, you know? The gym feels safer, more controlled." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "That's fair. The stakes are definitely higher outdoors. But man, the reward is worth it. The connection you feel with nature, the history of the rock under your fingers, it's something else." He paused, then added with a slight hesitation, "I'm heading out to Rumney next weekend with a few friends. There are some great beginner and intermediate routes if you'd be interested in joining." The invitation caught me off guard. Was this just a climbing thing, or was there something more? I'd been burned before, misreading signals from straight climbers who were just being friendly. But something about Jake's expression, the way he seemed genuinely interested in my response, gave me courage. "I'd like that," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "Though I should warn you, I'm probably going to slow your group down." Jake waved off my concern. "It's not about speed or difficulty. It's about enjoying the experience." He pulled out his phone. "Give me your number, and I'll text you the details." As we exchanged contact information, our fingers brushed briefly, and I felt that same electric connection from earlier. This time, I was almost certain Jake felt it too, his eyes lingering on mine a moment longer than necessary. "Actually," he said, pocketing his phone, "a bunch of us usually grab drinks at the Chalk Bucket after climbing on Thursdays. Would you want to join tonight? It's a good chance to meet the crew before the weekend trip." The Chalk Bucket was a bar near the gym that catered to the climbing community, with route maps decorating the walls and drinks named after famous climbs. I'd been there a few times, but never as part of a regular group. "Sure," I agreed, trying to ignore the flutter of excitement in my stomach. "I just need to shower and change first." "Same," Jake said with a laugh, gesturing to his chalk-covered clothes. "Meet you there in an hour?" I nodded, already mentally sorting through my wardrobe for something that struck the right balance between casual and attractive. As Jake headed to the locker room, I allowed myself a moment of cautious hope. Whether this was the beginning of a friendship, a climbing partnership, or something more, I was surprised by how much I wanted to find out. The Chalk Bucket was buzzing when I arrived, the after-work climbing crowd filling the tables and spilling onto the patio. I spotted Jake at a corner table with 3 others, his face animated as he described something with expansive hand gestures. He looked different outside the gym context, his damp hair styled casually, wearing a simple blue button-up that complemented his eyes. When he saw me, his face broke into a genuine smile that made my stomach flip. "Alex, you made it," he called, waving me over. Everyone, this is Alex, the guy who saved me from a nasty fall today. He proceeded to introduce his friends. Maya, a compact woman with impressive forearms and a quick laugh. Dario, whose lanky frame belied his apparent strength on the wall. And Taylor, who Jake described as the best route setter in 3 states. The group welcomed me easily, pulling up a chair and immediately pouring me a beer from their pitcher. The conversation flowed naturally, jumping between climbing topics, local competitions, and good-natured ribbing about each other's climbing styles. I found myself relaxing, occasionally catching Jake's eye across the table, a small thrill running through me each time. As the evening progressed, people shifted seats during bathroom breaks and drink orders. Eventually, Jake ended up next to me, our shoulders occasionally brushing as we talked. The contact, though minimal, sent sparks through me each time. "So what do you do when you're not scaling walls?" he asked during a lull in the group conversation. "I'm a graphic designer for an environmental nonprofit," I replied. "Mostly digital stuff, but some print materials for their campaigns. It's creative, but also feels meaningful, you know?" Jake nodded appreciatively. "That's awesome. Finding work that satisfies both the practical and passionate sides is rare. What about you?" I asked. "Physical therapist, specializing in sports injuries," he said. "Climbing actually led me to it. I had a bad shoulder injury years ago, and the PT who helped me recover made such a difference. I wanted to do that for others." "So you literally help people get back on their feet," I said with a smile. "Or back on the wall, as the case may be," he added, his eyes crinkling with humor. As the night went on, Maya and Taylor left, followed shortly by Dario, who had an early client meeting. Suddenly, Jake and I were alone at the table, the ambient noise of the bar creating a cocoon of privacy around us. "They're good people," Jake said, nodding toward the door where his friends had exited. "Been climbing with them for years." "They seem great," I agreed. "Thanks for including me." "Of course," Jake said, then hesitated slightly. "Can I be honest with you, Alex?" My heart rate kicked up. "Sure," I managed, trying to sound casual. "I've noticed you at the gym for weeks," he admitted. "Your technique on the wall is really distinctive, very methodical, patient." I kept wanting to introduce myself, but never found the right moment. Today, when my regular partner canceled, it seemed like the perfect opportunity. I felt warmth spreading through my chest that had nothing to do with the beer. "So you needed a spotter that badly, huh?" I teased gently. Jake laughed, a rich sound that I immediately wanted to hear again. "Well, I didn't need a spotter, but I specifically wanted it to be you." His eyes met mine, and this time there was no mistaking the interest there. "And then when I slipped, and you were right there, exactly where I needed you to be, it felt significant somehow." The air between us seemed charged with possibility. I took a breath, deciding to be brave. "The rainbow pin on your chalk bag, is that just allyship or?" Jake's smile softened. "I'm bi," he said simply. "Have been out since college. The climbing community has been mostly great about it, though there are always exceptions." I nodded, relief washing through me. "Gay," I offered in return. "And yeah, I've had mixed experiences in climbing circles. It's why I tend to keep to myself at the gym." "I noticed that too," Jake said. "You climb with such focus, but you rarely talk to anyone." It made me even more curious about you. Our conversation deepened as the bar began to empty around us. Jake told me about coming out to his climbing friends, about an ex-boyfriend who couldn't understand his dedication to the sport, about the freedom he found on the wall. I shared my own stories, the isolation I sometimes felt, the peace climbing brought me, my dreams of eventually tackling some of the famous routes out west. When the bartender announced last call, I was startled to realize how much time had passed. Jake looked equally surprised, checking his watch with raised eyebrows. "I can't remember the last time I stayed out this late on a weeknight," he admitted. "Work tomorrow is going to be rough." "Worth it, though?" I asked, suddenly uncertain. Jake's expression softened. "Absolutely worth it." He hesitated, then added, "I'd like to see you again, Alex. And not just at the gym or with the group this weekend." My heart hammered against my ribs. "I'd like that too." Outside the bar, the night air was cool against my skin. We stood facing each other on the sidewalk, that same electric tension humming between us. Jake took a step closer, his intention clear in his eyes. I met him halfway, and when our lips connected, it felt like completing a perfect climbing sequence, challenging, exhilarating, and somehow inevitable. The kiss was brief, but full of promise. When we pulled apart, Jake's smile was dazzling even in the dim street light. "I should get home," he said reluctantly. "Early clients tomorrow. But I'll text you about this weekend." I nodded, not trusting my voice entirely. We parted with another quick kiss and promises to connect soon. As I walked to my car, I couldn't help but think about how climbing had brought us together, how a moment of potential danger had created this unexpected connection. There was something poetic about it, about how Jake's grip had slipped but our bodies hadn't, creating a moment of trust that had blossomed into something more. The weekend climbing trip to Rumney was both terrifying and wonderful. Jake's friends welcomed me without question, and Jake himself proved to be a patient teacher on the Real Rock. There was a moment, as I clung to the side of a cliff face, my muscles trembling with effort and my mind racing with doubt, when Jake called up encouragement that made all the difference. "Trust yourself, Alex. You've got this. I'm right here if you need me, but you won't. This is all you." And somehow, knowing he was there, believing in me even as he gave me space to succeed on my own, helped me push through the fear and complete the climb. When I reached the top, the view was breathtaking. Rolling green forests stretching to distant mountains, the world spread out below me in a way I'd never experienced before. But even more meaningful was looking down to see Jake beaming up at me, pride evident in his expression. That night, around the campfire, with Jake's arm casually draped around my shoulders, I felt a sense of belonging I hadn't experienced in years. His friends shared stories and beers, treating our obvious connection as the most natural thing in the world. When Jake kissed me under the stars, away from the fire's glow, I knew something significant had shifted in my life. The weeks that followed developed a rhythm. Climbing sessions where we pushed each other to try harder routes, quiet dinners where we explored each other's lives beyond the wall, movie nights on Jake's comfortable couch that often ended with us tangled together, talking until dawn. I met his family over video calls. He met my college friends when they visited. We weren't rushing, but there was an undeniable momentum to our relationship. Of course, there were challenges. Jake's competition schedule sometimes took him away for weekends. My occasional bouts of anxiety, particularly about measuring up to his climbing abilities and his more outgoing personality, created moments of tension. We had our first real fight 3 months in, when I misinterpreted his friendship with an ex as something more. But even in conflict, there was a foundation of respect that helped us navigate back to understanding. The true test came during the regional climbing competition in August. Jake had been training intensively, determined to qualify for nationals. I'd been his consistent training partner, belaying countless attempts on increasingly difficult routes, massaging his sore muscles, and trying to provide the emotional support he needed without letting my own insecurities show. The day of the competition dawned clear and cool. The gym was packed with spectators and competitors, the atmosphere electric with anticipation. Jake was focused, going through his warm-up routine with methodical precision. I stayed nearby, handing him water and chalk when needed, trying to be a calming presence despite my own nerves on his behalf. His first few climbs went well, earning solid scores that kept him in contention. But the final route was brutal, a complex problem that had stumped several top climbers already. As Jake chalked up at the base of the wall, I caught his eye and gave him a thumbs up. He winked in return, a small gesture that somehow conveyed everything between us. Jake started strong, moving through the first section with the grace I'd come to admire. The crowd faded to background noise as I watched his ascent, every fiber of my being focused on his movement. He navigated the middle crux with precision, his body positioned perfectly to maintain balance on the challenging holds. Then came the final sequence, a dynamic move to a sloper hold that required perfect timing and grip strength. Jake set up the move, tensed, and launched himself upward. His hand made contact with the hold, but I could see immediately that something was wrong. His fingers scrabbled for purchase, unable to secure the grip. For one heart-stopping moment, he hung suspended, fighting gravity with everything he had. And then he fell. The safety rope caught him, of course, but the disappointment was palpable. The crowd groaned in sympathy. Jake hung there for a moment, head down, before being lowered to the ground. I pushed through the crowd to reach him, unsure what he would need from me in this moment of defeat. When I reached him, his expression was tight with disappointment. "I had it," he said quietly as he unclipped from the rope. I was right there. You climbed amazingly, I told him, helping him remove his harness. That last hold looked impossible. Jake shook his head, frustration evident in every line of his body. I've hit that move in practice. I should have had it. He walked away from the wall, and I followed, giving him space but staying close. Outside the main competition area, in a quiet corner of the gym, Jake finally stopped. His shoulders slumped as the adrenaline ebbed, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Without a word, I stepped forward and wrapped my arms around him. For a moment he remained stiff, but then he melted into the embrace, his face buried in my shoulder. I'm sorry, I murmured, running a hand up and down his back. I know how much you wanted this. Jake took a deep breath and straightened, though he didn't pull away from my arms. It's not just about the competition, he admitted. I wanted to prove something. To myself, to my old coach who said I'd never make it to nationals, to everyone who's ever doubted me. I nodded, understanding all too well the weight of others' expectations and our own internal pressures. You don't have anything to prove, Jake. Not to them, not to me. His eyes, when they met mine, were vulnerable in a way I rarely saw. I wanted you to be proud of me, he said softly. The admission caught me off guard. Jake, I'm already proud of you. Every day, in 100 different ways that have nothing to do with climbing. I took his face in my hands, making sure he was really hearing me. I'm proud of how you help your clients recover from injuries. I'm proud of how you call your mom every Sunday without fail. I'm proud of how you stand up for younger climbers when the gym bros get too aggressive. A small smile tugged at his lips. Yeah, I confirmed. Winning would have been great, but it doesn't change how I feel about you. Not one bit. Something shifted in Jake's expression, a softening, a realization. He leaned forward and kissed me, right there in the corner of the busy gym, not caring who might see. When he pulled back, the disappointment hadn't completely left his eyes, but there was something else there too, a certainty, a peace. I love you, Alex, he said, the words simple but profound. My heart seemed to expand in my chest. I love you too, I replied, the declaration feeling both momentous and completely natural. Later that night, after we joined his friends for consolation drinks and then retreated to his apartment, Jake brought it up again as we lay tangled together on his bed. You know what I realized today? He asked, his fingers tracing patterns on my arm. What's that? I murmured, content and drowsy against his chest. That day we met, when I slipped on the wall and you were there to spot me, it was foreshadowing. I propped myself up on one elbow to look at him. Foreshadowing. Jake nodded, his expression thoughtful. Life is full of slips and falls, right? In climbing, in competitions, in everything. What matters isn't that you never slip, but that you have someone there who you trust to catch you when you do. The sentiment washed over me, profound in its simplicity. And you trust me to catch you? I asked. Jake's smile was tender as he pulled me closer. With everything I am, he said, both on and off the wall. 6 months later, we stood together at the summit of a multi-pitch climb in Joshua Tree National Park, the desert stretching endlessly around us in a panorama of rugged beauty. The climb had been challenging, testing our communication, our trust in each other, and our individual skills. But we'd moved in perfect synchronization, each anticipating the other's needs, finding a rhythm together that made even the difficult sections feel manageable. As we sat side by side, drinking water and taking in the view, Jake reached into his chalk bag and pulled out a small box. My breath caught in my throat as he turned to face me, his expression a mixture of certainty and vulnerability that mirrored exactly how I felt whenever I looked at him. Alex, he began, his voice steady despite the height and the moment. When I slipped that day at the gym, I had no idea I was falling into the best thing that would ever happen to me. You've been my spotter, my belayer, my partner in every sense of the word. I don't want to climb through life with anyone else. He opened the box to reveal a simple titanium band. Will you marry me? With the vast landscape spread below us and the endless sky above, I gave the easiest answer of my life. Yes. Our bodies didn't slip as we embraced on that summit, secure in our balance and in each other. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that whatever climbs lay ahead of us, whatever challenges, whatever heights, whatever moments of fear or triumph, we would face them as we had faced everything since that first day, together, anchored to each other, trusting in the strength of our connection. Some might say it was just chance that brought us together. A regular climbing partner's cancellation, a momentary loss of grip, a split-second decision to ask a stranger for help. But I prefer to think it was something more, that in a world full of possible routes, Jake and I found the one that led us to each other. And that has made all the difference. Total_char_count, 18,877.